Welcome back to the Lingua. Today we're going to start another topic, which is the levels of linguistic analysis. Well, the question is why this topic? Whenever I talk to different people, I have come across that the levels are somehow misinterpreted by many people. Why? Because they think that branches of linguistics and levels of linguistics both are same, and some people even mix them, thinking they're somehow related. Well, they're not. So that's why I thought that it is very important to cover this topic. So, level of linguistics is about that how we study linguistics. It's not just in a single line. There are different levels, different steps that are needed to be followed to do a complete analysis. So language is not a flat surface, it is a layered architecture. And linguistic analysis, it layers it layer by layer. Every time a linguist asks a question about language, they're working at a specific level. So this topic maps all 6 of the levels. So let's start the topic. So this is a code that says the structure organization of language can be described at a number of different levels, each constituting a distinct object of linguistic inquiry. This is by John Lenz, Language and Linguistics, an Introduction. So before starting a video, please do like, subscribe and share. It's very important, and do comment too, as it's necessary for YouTube algorithm. I feel motivated or encourage us to do much more for this channel. Thank you. So let's start with the foundations of what exactly is a level of language. So it's very important to know what are the levels. So when a linguist describes a language, they do not attempt to describe everything at once. They work at different levels of abstraction, each level asking a fundamentally different kind of question. So this is not a merely teaching convenience, it reflects the actual architecture of language itself. We're starting with the Georgians open the study of language by moving through these levels in sequence, from sound to word to sentence to meaning to use. So here is the answer. What are the levels? Let me highlight it. These are the levels. From starting with sound to word to sentence to meaning, moving to the last level, which is to use. So precisely because each layer depends on the one beneath it. A sentence cannot exist without a word cannot exist without sounds arranged into pattern. So each layer is connected to another layer. They're not independent, they're dependent on one another. And to think that we can study one without touching another, that's not possible, as all of them are linked to each other, supporting each other, making and giving the whole picture of linguistics. So here it is. First basic feature is hierarchy. Every level builds on the one below it. Sound forms word forms sentences. Sentences carry meaning. Meaning is interpreted in context. The order is not arbitrary, it is structural. So this shows and claims that language is not arbitrary, it is a structural system which follows a proper pattern. So the next one is separability, which is each level can be isolated and studied in its own term. A phonologist can describe the sound system of language without needing to know its syntax. The levels are analytically independent. So you can study them separately, but at the same time, while studying separately, you'll be discussing each one of them too. Like when you are studying phonology, at phonological level, You'll be using words and doing there, that's how something is pronounced. So morphology is there too. At the same time, they're independent, but at the same time, they're dependent too. Interdependence. So this is the claim that I've been talking about. That despite being separable, the levels interact constantly. A change in stress phonology can signal a change in grammatical category, which is morphosyntax. The levels are a system, not a list. So that's how this shows that they follow proper hierarchy. They're separate, but at the same time they're not separate too, because each and every one of them is dependent on one another. As at phonological level, you'll be studying structure too, which is the core of syntax. That's an example. Let's move forward. Scholarly history. How did the levels framework develop? So the idea that language operates as a system of distinct, interacting levels was not inventory in one moment. It was built up across a century of linguistic thought, from structuralism in Europe to formal linguistics in America. So that's how it started. Was in 1916. This is starting a formal study. It's not like that before there was no study in linguistics. There was study, but it was considered as language analysis. So it started as a proper study in 1916 by Ferdinand de Saussure, which is the system of language. So Saussure's Cours de Linguistique Generale, which is Course in General Linguistics, established that language is a structured system of signs, not a collection of isolated words. This structuralist insight that elements only have meaning in relation to one another became the philosophical foundation for thinking about language in terms of separable, interacting planes of organization. So, as he's a Swiss, so this is written in Swiss language, but he is the first ever one to say that language is a structured system of sign, not a collection of isolated words. Then moving onward to Leonard Bloomfield, he's an American. In 1933, presented formal separation of language. In language, this is his work, language. Bloomfield formalized the distinction between the phonological, morphological, and syntactic planes of analysis in American structuralism. For the first time, these were treated as systematically separate objects of description, a rigorous scientific separation that made modern linguistics possible. So he presented a base in American linguistics, which is presenting language as a structural system, not just a normal system. Then moving on to 1960, Walharin, which is André Martinet. He's French linguist, presented double articulation. So Martinet theory of double articulation in Elements de Linguistique Generale demonstrated that language operates simultaneously on two distinct levels, the level of meaningful units, morphemes, and the level of meaningless but distinct unit, phonemes. This proved that the levels are real structural properties of language, not just categories invented for pedagogy. So this they all helped in shaping and presenting the levels of linguistics. Then the other one is in 1981, John Lenz, the clearest articulation. So Lenz, Language and Linguistics, an Introduction, remain the most precise scholarly articulation of this framework. Lenz explicitly identified levels as distinct objects of linguistic inquiry and carefully distinguishes them from the subdisciplines of linguistics, a distinction that sits at the heart of this page. So, he's the first one to present levels of linguistics in a proper way. So, let's move on to the 6 levels from sound to use. So, every major introductory linguistics textbook organizes it according to the same sequence of levels. This is not a coincidence, it is epistemological architecture of this discipline. Redford, Atkinson, Brayton, Clason, Spencer structure their foundational Cambridge textbooks in 4 parts that mirror the levels exactly. So that's how they're presented, like how the levels actually works. So the levels first start from sound, that is phonetics and phonology. Moving on to the word, which is part 2, morphology. Which then moves on to sentences, which is part 3, syntax. And moving on to the last part, which is part number 4, meaning and use, dealing with semantics and pragmatics. So sounds, phonetics and phonology, then morphology, then syntax, then semantics and pragmatics. This is not arbitrary organization. It is a structured organization of the level. So let's now explore each level in detail for better understanding. The first one is phonetics, which is phones, sound wave. It deals with that. So the question that is basically asked in it is, what are the physical and articulatory properties of speech sounds? So what this level study is, is phonetics is the foundation of the entire stack, the study of the speech sound as physical phenomena, independent of any particular language system. It has 3 branches: articulatory phonetics, which studies how the vocal tract produces sound. Second is acoustic phonetics, which deal with the physics of sound waves in the air. And the third one, auditory phonetics, how the ear and brain perceive sound. We have discussed these in phonetics Fontes video. You can check them out from there. So phonetics is independent of any language. It deals with all the language. So tool of the trade, world has IPA, which is International Phonetic Alphabet, a universal notation system for transcribing any sound that any human language uses. Every phonician or phonetician in the world reads the same symbol the same way. So this is the first level that is starting with all, dealing with all the languages, not just one particular language. And it starts with sound, having IPA, which is universally followed by everyone. Then moving on to the next, which is phonology, which deals with phonemes and syllables. So the basic question is, how are sounds organized into a system within a specific language? So what this level study, let's scroll it a bit. Okay. Phonology studies the abstract mental organization of sound, the sound system of language, not the physical sound themselves. It identifies which sound distinctions are meaningful in a given language, which is phonemes, how sounds change depending on their position in the world, which are allophones, and what pattern governs syllable structure, stress, and intonation. So phonetics deal with all the language, where on the other hand, phonology deals with one specific particular language. It can be any language you're dealing with. If you're dealing with English, say it's English phonology, Urdu, so it's Urdu phonology, French, so French phonology. So phonology is different for every language, whereas phonetics is the same as it deals with all the language. So key contrast with phonetics is phonetics describes sound as physical element. Phonology describes sound as element of a system. Example is the aspirated p is not p, it is p. In pin, and the unaspirated p, well, this is p, this is p, in spin are phonetically different, but phonologically the same unit in English. So these are the first two levels. Let's move on to the third one, which is morphology. The basic question asked by it deals with morphemes and words, and the question asked by is how are words internally structured. So what this level studies is morphology analyzes the internal structure or architecture of words. The morpheme, the smallest unit of meaning, is its primary object. Morphology distinguishes free morphemes, words that stand alone, like book, run, happy, from bound morpheme, like as affixes that must attach to a road, like un, ing, nas. It also separates inflectional morphology, which is grammatical variation, walks, walked, from derivational morphology, which is word creation, happy, forms happiness. So word breakdown is unbreakable. This is an example. So three morphemes it's having, which is on, and break, and able. So cat, two morphemes, cat and plus plural s. Sang, one morpheme, irregular past tense encoded in a single form. So this is the third level. Let's move on to the fourth. So syntax deals with phrases and sentences and asks the basic question, how are words arranged into grammatical sentences? So what this level study is syntax describes the rule governing how words combine into phrases and sentences. It explains why this is example, the dog bit the man and the man bit the dog are both grammatical but mean opposite thing. And why dog the bit man the is not grammatical sentence in English at all. Syntax is the grammar of combination, operating above the word but below the meaning. So what syntax cover is constituency, which word form a unit, grammatical relation, subject, verb, object, and word order typology, which is does the language follow SOV or SVO, which is subject, verb, object, and VSO across languages, and the other which deals with it is moment rules. So let's move to semantics, which is level number 5. It deals with meaning and propositions. So ask the basic question, what does this sentence mean, independent of who says it and where. So it deals with just sentence meanings. So semantics is the study of linguistic meaning as a property of language, its system itself. Separate from speaker, situation, and intention, it covers word meaning, which is lexical semantics, logical content of sentences, which is propositional semantics, and the relations between meaning, which is synonyms, antonyms, polysemy, entailment, and contradiction. So the question is semantics versus pragmatics. There was the difference. So cat is on the mat. Semantics tell the what state of affairs this sentence asserts. A cat's location is presented in semantics, whereas in pragmatics tells us what someone might say it and what they might mean by saying it in a given context. So that's the difference between semantics and pragmatics. Let's move on to pragmatics to understand it more. So it's the last level, which is the sixth one. Pragmatics deals with utterance and context and asks what does this mean here for this speaker in this situation. So what does this level study? Pragmatic studies how context shape meaning. Two utterances with identical word can mean entirely different things depending on who speaks them, to whom, where, and why. It covers speech acts that are what we do with language, like requesting, promising, warning. Other one is implicator, what is implied rather than stated. Next is dixes, words like here, now, I, that shift meaning with context and politeness convention. So semantics deal with only sentence meaning, whereas pragmatics takes meaning from the context, the what is said in what situation and who says it and why the something is said. Whereas semantics deal with what is the meaning of sentence, what is being done in sentence, that's it. So classic example, can you pass solve? Syntactically, a question about physical ability. Pragmatically, a polite request, the meaning lives beyond the sentence in the social context of its use. So these are the levels of linguistics. Wait a second. So the starting from here, moving to this, and here at last. So phonetics deal with sound of all languages. Then phonology deals with sound system of particular language. The morphology deals with word. Then syntax deals with syntax structure, sentence or phrase structure. Then semantics deals with sentence meaning, whereas pragmatics takes meaning to context. So we start from sound, reach till context. And then the levels do not work in isolation. So the levels are analytically separable, but empirically they interact constantly. Two classic examples show this vividly. Let's look at the example. It is example number 1 is the word record or record. Phonology meets syntax here. So the same spelling, two different pronunciations, conditioned entirely by grammatical category. This is the direct interaction between phonological pattern, stress placement, and the syntactic one, noun versus verb. So given word crystal, so let's check it. As a noun, it is record. Record. Here shows where you're going to stop. Starting stress from here, record. So this is the phonology of it. Stress falls on the first syllable, record. Then in syntax or morphosyntax, it is a noun, a new record. The grammatical category noun triggers first syllable stress. The phonological pattern is entirely determined by the syntactic category. So this shows that the dependence of levels on each other. So let's look at it as a verb, which is record. Record. First one is record, and this one is record. 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 So stress falls on the second syllable, record. Syntax and morphosyntax analysis of it is a verb, a new record. The grammatical category verb triggers second syllable stress, same letter, entirely different phonological realization which changes the meaning of it. So that's how this shows the interdependence of the fields on one another or the levels on one another. So example number 2 is syntax shape semantic structural ambiguity. This sentence is structurally ambiguous. Its phrase structure can be parsed in two ways, producing two different meanings. So flying planes can be dangerous. So the first is syntax to semantics, which is flying, which is a verb, gerund, subject. The act of piloting aircraft can be dangerous. Here, flying is a verbal gerund. The subject of the sentence is the activity of flying. So the syntax that it is can be broken down into two parts. The flying plane can be dangerous. So this is taken as a separate constituent, and this one is taken as separate. So let's look at the other interpretation, which is flying. Here it is taken as adjective. In first one it was taken as gerund. So here it modifier of planes. Aircraft that are airborne can be dangerous. Here flying is an adjective modifying planes. So here syntax, it can be broken down to this part. That's why bracket representation is shown. Flying planes can be dangerous. Flying is taken as a separate constituent, then plane is taken as separate constituent, then can be dangerous is taken as separate constituent. So here it shows that meaning can change. How? It depends upon how you interpret it. So one sentence, two syntactic structure, two semantic interpretations. The syntax directly determines the meaning. Fromkin, Rodman, and Holmes use this type of example to demonstrate that levels are not sealed compartments, they are interlocking components of a single system. Let's look at the critical distinction, which is the level of analysis versus the branches of linguistics. So this shows the clear difference that what are levels and what are branches. The scholarship is consistent on this boundary. Levels of analysis and branches of linguistics are two different things, related but not equivalent. Understanding the difference is essential for any student of the field. So let's look at the levels of linguistics and then branches. Describes the structural layer of language itself, whereas the branches describe the subdisciplines and methodological approaches. So the second point is hierarchy ordered, each built on the one below, wherein branches not hierarchically ordered, they're parallel domain. And the third point in levels is present in every human language without exception. So whereas in branches it is defined by method or domain, not by layer of language. So the fourth one is the object of study, what is being described. So here the object is focus, wherein branch is the perspective of study, how and from where language is studied. So established by Saussure and Bloomfield, levels are, whereas in branches, many branches can work across multiple levels simultaneously. These are the levels: phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics, whereas branches are social linguistics, psycholinguistics, neurolinguistics, historical linguistics, computational linguistics, forensic linguistics. Well, this is the clear distinction between levels of linguistics and the branches of linguistics. Let's move forward. Here it is. A sociolinguist, for instance, may example phonological variations across social classes, morphological differences between dialects, and syntactic code switching, all in the same study. A psycholinguistic linguist may investigate how children acquire morphology and how adults resolve syntactic ambiguity in real time. Branches cross levels freely. Levels are fixed planes of language system itself, while branches shows that branches can move freely. You can study anyone at any time. Well, for levels, they're fixed, first moving from phonetics, then phonology, morphology, syntax, semantics, and pragmatics. Because if you don't understand phonetics, how are you going to deal with morphology? And if you don't understand syntax, you cannot study others too, as it's important. Everyone is dependent on one another. So these are the references from where the data is being taken. So that's it for today. In the next lecture, we'll be discussing the branches of linguistics. That's all for today. I hope you understand it. Thanks for watching. Please do like, subscribe, and share, and comment. Enjoy your day.